Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Rounds. It's Dr. Ruddy. The subject for today's discussion is weaponizing fear, the tragedy of unnecessary mastectomy. Let me begin by saying that my mother had a mastectomy in 1975 that she probably did not need. She then had radiation therapy, which she definitely did not need, but the doctors didn't know that then. She went on to live another 37 years. Her breast cancer never came back. Unfortunately, the radiation therapy that she received, I believe, contributed to her death from cardiac disease. This is not something that happens today because the methods for providing radiation therapy have improved. This is the point I'd like to make. Back in the early 70s, women could only have mastectomy. But it wasn't long after that that the scientists were able to prove, primarily through the leadership of Bernie Fisher at the National Cancer Institute, that mastectomy was really not required if the tumor was small, if it was less than 5 centimeters, if there was only one tumor in the breast, if the patient had never received prior radiation therapy, and if there was no evidence of a BRCA mutation. And so, over the next 50 years, scientists began to try and persuade the medical community that mastectomies were not necessary. They did not add a day to the life of any woman who had a mastectomy. And the rate of mastectomies then plummeted, and women were told that if they had small tumors, they could have lumpectomy and radiation therapy, and they did. And as I say, not one of them suffered loss of survival as a result of preserving their breasts. So why today, in the past 10 years, has the incidence of elective mastectomy, particularly removing the perfectly normal opposite breast, why has that increased 300% in the past 10 years? This does not appear to be related to the question of reconstruction, in which you might think, well, let's remove both breasts so that we can reconstruct both breasts and they'll both look identical. No. This increased incidence of electively removing a perfectly normal breast, indeed, the increased incidence of removing breasts that have cancer that do not require mastectomy for adequate treatment, has increased alarmingly. We believe the most likely explanation is that women have been basically in a state of fear, persuaded that if they remove that breast, if they remove the other breast, somehow that's going to improve their survival. And it doesn't. Now, let me say that I understand completely the terror that overwhelms women when they think they might have breast cancer or they do have breast cancer, and they have very typically a reflexive knee-jerk reaction, which is, get rid of that breast, get rid of the other one, I want to be done with it. The problem is that this is not necessary. You can be adequately treated for your breast cancer, provided you meet the criteria I outlined previously, by just having lumpectomy. Remove the tumor, get it all out, have radiation therapy, you keep that breast, you keep the other breast, and then the question is, well, what is the risk that the cancer comes back? You're saying, Dr. Ruddy, I don't have to remove that breast, but I'm worried. I have one cancer, am I going to get another? Well, what is the risk? What is the risk that the cancer comes back in that breast or the other breast? The incidence is about probably less than 1% per year. Well, most people don't understand what that means, so let me tell you. If you take 100 women, they all have identical tumors, same size, same position, same surgery, lumpectomy, radiation therapy, and you follow them for 10 years, how many of them will have had the cancer come back in that breast? It's less than 10. 1 per year over 10 years, 10 years. The other 90 women have not had a recurrence of the breast cancer in that breast. They have their breasts. If the cancer comes back, then the breast would need to be removed. That's true because you can only have radiation therapy once. But again, this does not impact your overall survival. If the cancer comes back in the breast, you treat the breast again. The only risk that there might be a decreased survival related to breast cancer is if the cancer metastasizes, if it goes to lung, liver, bone, brain, etc. Again, I believe that for whatever reason, this increase in the number of unnecessary, mutilating mastectomies is related to this weaponizing of fear. Women are afraid. I totally get that. I understand that completely. Our job is to make sure that we can allay their fear and give them the information they need to make smart choices. The American Board of Internal Medicine, the American Society of Breast Surgeons, both oppose unnecessarily removing a normal breast. So, if you have breast cancer, you need to ask the question, do I have to have that breast removed? And if I don't have to have that breast removed, think hard about removing it anyway. Certainly think double hard about removing the other breast. Surgery is not a trivial undertaking. Reconstruction is not a trivial undertaking. You can have complications, you can have bleeding, you can have infections, and if in fact you're going to be followed for a breast cancer recurrence, having those implants can be a problem on occasion. And we know from a previous video and the recent FDA alert that having breast implants increases your risk for an unusual, but nevertheless distinct, rare form of anaplastic large cell lymphoma. So you've already had one cancer, you're worried about the cancer coming back. You don't want a second completely different kind of cancer, even though the risk is relatively small. What you want to do is have your cancer treated completely and appropriately, and then you want to move forward and get back to your life because, as my patient Lillian said, the cancer was in my breast, the cancer was not in me. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. Subscribe, share. Let me know if there's anything else that you'd like me to discuss. Thumbs up to you, thumbs down to breast cancer. And I will now give you a link to something completely different and refreshing, one of my very favorite YouTube channels, I Love Paris. I think you're going to find it delightful. Thank you, and see you again soon at Morning Rounds with Dr. Ruddy.